Okay, welcome back. We're going to hopefully try to wrap it up in this video, but if not, we'll have to maybe try to extend it one more video. So this is the idea that I really wanted to share with you. And it centers around a different interpretation of "To the First Young Birch." Instead of going back to where we started our walk, okay, what if we just use that to interpret the walking stick, which we said was part of the rebus, and the most important part of the rebus was understanding the symbolism and also understanding the circular nature of it, giving us a major clue that we need to go back somewhere. We don't know where, though, because what exactly is the first young birch? Well, we just talked about the younger futhark that has the actual rune for the word birch. So you have the young and the birch all together in this rune. And so if that rune represents the park signs in Milwaukee, where was the first one that we came across? So we started here and we started walking down Wells, and we went all the way down. We passed Cathedral Square, which doesn't have one, and then eventually we came out at Juneau Park. This is the first park that has one of those signs. So what if it's telling us to go to the first young birch, which is the park sign at Solomon Juneau Park, basically. That sign is located right down here. Okay, now the next line is past 3, staying west. Well, we would have to have a different interpretation because now we're nowhere near City Hall, I'm sorry. Well, we have this 3 in the hand, and that hand, if you go back and watch the earlier videos, we said was an image match at the Solomon Juneau statue. On the back side there's a relief, and it shows his hand, very similar to the hand in the painting. So if we're to pass 3, we're essentially passing the statue again. Now earlier in the verse we passed it by, it said cast in copper. That took us down here to the Lincoln Memorial Boulevard. This time we need to stay west. So we need to stay up here more on Prospect side as we walk through the park. So now as we keep walking, we're going to look for a letter from the country of Wonderstone's hearth. Well, if we think those are runes, because that's what we've been focusing on this whole time, our next thing that we come to of any kind of importance is the Leif Erikson statue, which is right here. Now that statue, this is it right here. He's standing on top of this column, and this column, has a bunch of rune letters on it. So that could be the letter from the country of Wonderstone's hearth, just like we explained last video. It's Scandinavian runes. We already kind of made the connection with the elves being from Scandinavia, and they were the makers of the cask. And so Wonderstone's hearth would then be looking for a letter from Scandinavia, which is these rune letters. Okay, so now here's the other interesting thing about this. Okay, and this is where we get back into the symbolism. Okay, you're supposed to find this letter on a proud, tall fifth. So one of the things that I looked at was I started looking at the definitions, and so proud is like a feeling of deep pleasure or satisfaction as a result of one's own achievements, qualities, or possessions. Okay? And as I was looking at this, one of the things that it reminded me of just looking at this, because I'm a chess player, is it looks like a pawn. And in chess, there is a specific rule in chess called en passant, which means in passing. And so I'll give you a real quick chess lesson if you've never played chess, okay? Your pawns can move forward 2 spots when they move their very first move. From then on, they can only move forward 1 spot. And when they attack, they have to attack diagonally forward. That's about all a pawn can do. Okay, if you are to get a pawn onto the other side of the board, okay, you have to know a little bit about what the board is called. The columns are files, and the rows are ranks. So if you were to get across to the other side of the board, you're on the 5th rank. And that's where this white pawn is that's shown right here in this demonstration. It's on the 5th rank. It's on the opponent's side of the board. Now the demonstration it's showing is, you could see normally it would be able to attack diagonally forward into this spot. So it's protecting that spot right there. And if this pawn moves into that spot, it's going to get attacked and taken. But since it can move 2 spots on its opening move, since it hasn't moved yet, it can go past the attacking point of this pawn on the 5th rank. And so en passant means that since it passed by that spot, this pawn on the 5th rank can still attack that and take it. Okay? And so if you think back to our definition of proud was something that we had possessed and were proud of our achievements. And if you know anything about chess, it's all about taking control of the center of the board. And so if you can take control of this middle part and have a dominant pieces all focusing in on that, you're going to feel real good about your chances in that game. So I started thinking about how this Leif Erikson statue could literally just represent, because it's symbolism, a pawn in a game of chess. And it's proud, it's tall, and it's a 5th because it would be considered on the 5th rank. And we talked about being en passant, in passing. Well, look back to the verse. I mean, it's past 3, staying west, past the compass. Like, there's all these references throughout the whole course of this verse that can kind of maybe hint to the importance of that. There's other ones too. Like, if you take a look at this picture, you can see that it has it listed as AD 1000 when he came over. And in the verse, it mentions the word grand. So, I mean, there's these little hints throughout the course of this verse that could be leading us to find this idea of this statue. And then the last thing would be actually in the story. In the story, when you're reading about the old world coming to the new world and the fairies as they started to come over, the first one is Ruddy Alf, and he is basically the symbolism for Leif Erikson. It's his story. And so it really started to make me think that maybe this is the end point right here. His statue is the proud tall 5th. And so then at its southern foot would be the dig spot, the treasure waits. The other thing that's really interesting, tying this all back together, we started with the Cleveland verse. If you remember, that was verse 4. And we said that it was a couplet and with the word birch. And this was 5 syllables, so we had that meter. And when you go and look at verse 8, and we said to the first young birch was the same meter. Well, so is past 3 staying west. That's 5. Of Wonderstone's hearth. That's 5. On a proud tall 5th. That's 5. It even mentions the word 5th in it. At its southern foot. That's another 5. All of these have that same meter of that 5 syllables, which ultimately ties it back to that first clue that we looked at with the couplet from the Cleveland verse. And I just think that it's a very, if this is all just a coincidence, it's a very, very interesting coincidence. I would say that it's definitely worth investigating. I would say that you probably need to look on the south side of that statue and possibly probe if you were interested in looking in that area. But just remember, Milwaukee is not going to allow any digs. So at your own risk, you are on your own if you feel like investigating that as a potential spot for the cask. But I mean, I just found all this really interesting. And even to take it one more step further, no pun intended, when you look at meter, and one of the things that it talks about is feet, the meter of a verse can be described as a sequence of feet. And the final line where the dig spot is at its southern foot. So I mean, there's just a lot of things that all kind of tie together and make this a really interesting possibility. So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you. I got to wrap this thing up. Let me know what you think.